Hello there and welcome to Black Jackal Gaming. We're going to take a look at how to play Ultramarines in 10th edition. The detachment that's based on Ultramarines is the Gladius Task Force. This is a very flexible detachment and it focuses on bringing different tactics that you can use throughout different parts of the game. The enhancements are a bit of a mixed bag and they're quite pricey as well, so you probably avoid the majority of them. But they do have solid stratagems and they are varied, so you get the most use out of them through different parts of the game. We've got a lot of specialist characters available which you will be using, so let's get into it. So looking at the detachment rule, they have the combat doctrines. So at the start of each command phase you select a doctrine. Each one of these can be used only once during the game, so you can select them through rounds 1 to 5, and you can choose not to use a doctrine because it's important to make sure you're maximising the most out of each one. So the first one is the Devastator Doctrine. This allows units to still be eligible to shoot when they have advanced. So you can usually shoot if you've got the assault keyword when you advanced, but this allows all units during that turn to be able to advance and shoot. So it gives you that extra mobility. Then we've got the Tactical Doctrine. This makes units eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn that they've fallen back. So this gives you the ability, once the opponent has closed in on you or you've charged them, to then in your next turn to fall back, reassess the situation and either shoot the enemy unit or charge back into them. Some units such as the Outriders do have bonuses for charging, so you get that additional damage on your weapon, so it's often quite good to fall back and then charge back into combat rather than staying in it. And we have the Assault Doctrine. This is the final doctrine and this allows you to be eligible to charge after you've already advanced. So usually if you advance you can't charge, but this allows you to advance and then still be able to charge. So your fast moving units, such as your Assault Intercessors with jump packs and your Outriders, they're going to be able to move quickly up the board and still be able to charge. Looking at the enhancements that you want to be utilising, we've got Honour Ferryman. This is 15 points. This is a buff to the model only and it adds 1 to the attack and strength characteristic of the melee weapons for the model. We then have Artificer Armour. This is 10 points. This gives the model a save characteristic of 2+, and it also gives them a 5+ feel no pain. So once those shots bypass your armor save, you then get the additional 5+ to try and ignore the damage. The other two are pretty pricey and a bit on the rubbish side. You got the Fire Discipline, which has had multiple nerfs throughout. It's now 40 points to just give you sustained hits, and if you're in a certain doctrine, you get to re-roll your advance and charge rolls. So not the best really for 40 points. Looking at the main stratagems that you can utilise, you've got Armour of Contempt, which is in all the detachments. This reduces incoming AP by 1. It's had a recent update, so you can only do this for the attacking unit that's selected you to be a target. After then, your Armour of Contempt will no longer apply, so if any other units shoot into this unit, you do not get the reduction of AP. Then we have Honour the Chapter. This gives you Lance and Melee, gives you +1 to wound. And if you're in the Assault Doctrine, it also gives you an additional AP on your melee weapons. So this is quite good maybe on your Outriders. If you're charging on the Assault Doctrine, you're going to have +1 to wound, 2 AP on your chainswords and damage 2 as well, which is quite nice. Adaptive Strategy allows you to choose a doctrine for the unit. So regardless of what other doctrines are active for the turn, or if no doctrines are active, you can select the exact doctrine that you want available for this unit. Storm of Fire. This ignores cover on ranged weapons. So if a unit is in cover, it'll get the benefits of cover, which will reduce AP essentially by 1 because it gives them +1 to save if they've got a save throw that's worse than 3+. And if you're in the Devastator Doctrine, you also gain the additional AP. So this is essentially a 2-point swing of AP or reduction to their save. Looking at the leaders that you can utilise, there's a lot of named characters. The first one being Rebute Gilliman. So the main thing you want to use him for is his second Oath Moment target. But it's important to note that this only becomes active if the first one dies. So you've got to be very selective in your first choice of Oath Moment target because you do want both of these to go active during the turn. He's also lone operative when he's within 3 inches of your infantry unit, so he can't be selected if a model is outside the 12 inches. And he can stand back up once a game on a roll of 3+, which is quite handy if you want his Alpha moment to still be going off for the entire game. He is durable and he has good melee attacks, but he's probably best being kept a little bit further back because you do want to access that Alpha moment target and then later in the game use his melee attacks just to soften up the enemy even more and finish them off. Marnius Cowgar, he's just had a points increase as well, but he's a very good model. He allows the unit that he's leading to shoot and charge when they're advancing and fall back, so it gives you a lot of utility there. Here's a Feel No Pain 4+ when he has his Vitrix Honor Guard with him. He comes with 2 of these as standard, and it's important to note that he can join other units as well, so you've got a lot of bodyguards around him. You've got Chief Librarian Tigurus, very good model. He's got a Feel No Pain 4+ against psychic attacks for his unit. This is as well as mortal wounds, so that's very good. He's -1 to hit for the unit, making them very durable. And once per battle round, he can use counter-offensive, fire overwatch, go to ground, or heroic intervention for free. So not only does he have that added durability, he does have that ability to go to ground, so gain that benefit of cover if you aren't in cover, making them even more durable. Or if you've got certain units with him, such as the Desolation Squad, having that free use of overwatch can be very nice. He's got a more powerful Witchfire attack than the other librarians that you can choose from, and his melee profile is a little bit better as well. Then you got Uriel Ventress, another very good character. He's got an ability to reuse a stratagem this turn, so you can get the most out of your really good stratagems, and you can use stratagems on his unit even when they're battle shocked, which is very nice. Now his main ability is what you want to lean into. He can select 1 unit in your game, he can select 1 unit in your army, and this unit can then deep strike. So you select this before the game begins when you're declaring your reserves. So you can give any unit in the game deep strike, which is very nice because you can utilize this to add a bit of damage or firepower to parts of the board that your opponent wouldn't necessarily expect you to have. Finally, there's Lieutenant Titus, formerly Captain Titus, but he is a lieutenant now. Here's a Feel No Pain 5+, and this is only for himself, but it's quite nice. And he grants sustained hits 1 for the unit. Now, there's not many ways to get sustained hits for Tacticus models, and considering you're paying the 40 points for the Fire Discipline, you're getting, just for the additional, I think it's 30 points for the model, you're getting not only that, but he's got his Chainsword, which he's hitting on 2, he's got 8 attacks, he's got the Feel No Pain, and he is a model with multiple wounds. So just for those 30 points more, you're getting much more out of the model in the unit, because for that 40 points, you're going to have to put it on another model anyway. So you've got the additional points for that model. He's got the ability to strike on death in melee if he hasn't already fought. So if he's been charged or they've got fight first or something along those lines, and they strike him down before he gets to fight back, on a 2+, he will still be able to fight by the end of the turn, and then you remove him once he has done so. Looking at the core units that you're going to use to support your army, you've got the Intercessors, which are, I think, quite an underrated unit. They can target 1 unit in the game, and when they successfully hit them, it then grants +1 to hit for the rest of the units in your army for that turn, which is very nice to have. This is quite good because it can negate the -1 to hit for things such as lightning fast reactions. So you will be putting your models back onto those 3s to hit rather than 4s that certain models can have. This is also useful if you've had to move, because there's a lot of weapons in the game that have heavy, so you get that +1 to hit. So if you are moving, you can still utilize that hitting on 2s. They also come with a scout 6 inches. So at the start of the game, you can move them 6 inches to set them up or get them into cover where they're going to be able to utilize their ability and not get shot on turn 1. And they've had the recent update where their paired combat blades, which come with a sustained hits 1, now have an AP on them as well. So they're looking like a very nice unit. We have the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. He gets a selected priority objective at the start of the game, and what this means is that while he's alive, any enemy unit that is on this objective, you get to re-roll wound rolls of 1 against it. This is very nice because it allows you to pick an objective at the start of the game that you either want to contest, so you're going to be fighting on it lots, or maybe one that you want to leave a little bit more sparse so the opponent doesn't target it, so you can just put a handful of models there to take advantage, or maybe use that as the ability to sweep down one flank that they think they shouldn't target because you have that ability to then crush them from the side. Then the Intercessors, who have had a nice little upgrade in the recent data slate, they come with sticky objectives, so once they're on an objective for the command phase, it is then considered yours, so they can move off of it and still hold it. They come with the heavy keyword, so that +1 to hit if they stand still, as well as the assault keyword, so they can advance and still charge. They've got a new ability, so when they are putting all their shots into one target, They go from 2 attacks on their bolt rifles to 4, so quite a bit of firepower they have. And then the Reavers. I've always had a soft spot for the Reavers because I think they're quite nice models, and I do think they've been undervalued. They do come with a lot of abilities. They can deep strike. They come with scouts as well, so if you want to start them on the board, they've got that pre-game move. They've got grapple hooks, so they can ignore vertical movement when they're moving. So essentially just bypass terrain, which is really nice. And they've got precision on their weapons, and they do have the terror ability to force battle shock tests on the charge. But they have an even better ability that they've been given on top of this. They now have the ability to turn off OC for units that are within 3 inches of them. So once they get into that 3-inch zone, they can flip objectives very easily, which is really nice. Not only that, they can force battle shock, and it's at -1 now, so they can turn off OC that way as well. But more importantly, it stops stratagems being used for that unit. As well as this, they do have the AP on their knives as well, which is very nice because it has precision as well. We're going to take a look at the damage dealers that are going to allow you to utilize your strategies throughout the game. First up, we've got the Gladiator Lancer. It comes with a really nice ability where you can reroll the hit, wound, and damage roll. And this is very good because you do have the heavy laser destroyer. It has a heavy keyword, so it's hitting on 2s if it stands still. It comes with 2 shots in 72-inch range, so it can cover the entire battlefield if you have line of sight. It's got the strength 14. I think it's -3 or 4 AP, and the damage is D6 plus 3. So it's very consistent at hitting. Hitting on 2s, you got the reroll to hit, reroll to wound, reroll to damage. And if you're going into the open moment target, you got the +1 to wound, so that's strength 14. You're wounding the majority of the things on the game on 2s and 3s. If you do have that +1 to wound, there's nothing in the game that you're not going to be wounding on 2s. Eliminators are another nice little option. If you give them the las fusils, they're hitting on 2s because they've got the heavy keyword. They're strength 9, so they're wounding on 2s against most things, especially with the open moment target. You got the reroll and the +1 to wound. They've got -3 AP and D6 damage. Now they do have the ability to move after shooting if you give the carbine to the sergeant, but you do lose a shot with your las fusils. But what's really good is if they do stand still when they shoot, you get devastating wounds. So you're often putting D6 through devastating wounds, which is very nice, especially if you decide to give 3 of the eliminators the las fusils, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s and 3s, and that's devastating wounds. It's a very nice damage profile for not many wounds at all. They've also got stealth, so they're -1 to hit, which makes them a little bit more durable. Then we've got Hellblasters combined with Titus or a Lieutenant. So you've got deep striking with Titus or the Lieutenant. This is using Fentress's ability. So you're either getting sustained hits 1 with Titus or lethal hits with the Lieutenant, which gives you quite a nice damage profile coming in, especially into your open moment target, because you get the full reroll. So you can fish for those sustained hits or those lethal hits. And they also get to shoot on death. And this is even if you die through hazardous. So you're going to get a lot of shots away. And if anyone comes in and they hit you with Overwatch and kill you, well, you get to shoot right back with that special rule. Stern Guard also look quite good, especially with Titus. If you're deep striking them in, again, with Ventress's ability, you've got the sustained hit 1 on their combi weapons. Into your open moment target, you've got 4 rerolls to hit, and their ability gives you the 4 rerolls to wound. They come with the anti-infantry 4+ and devastating wounds. So if you're going into an infantry model, if you score 4+, it bypasses their saves. And with the 4 rerolls to wound, you're going to be fishing for these. And you're going to be in rapid fire range if you're coming in deep strike. Which means if you've got the 10 units, you've got a lot of shots coming in. You can kill a lot of things in the game. Now you've got some main units that you're going to utilize scoring your points for you. First up, the Reavers. We've already spoken about their ability to turn off OC and force battle shock. With the deep strike and the scout 6 inches and ignore vertical movement when going across terrain, it makes them very mobile. It gives you a lot of versatility how to use them, and it makes them quite easy to get onto objectives. And when you are on those objectives, it gives you the ability to flip them and take control. So you're either going to hold on to them for your turn, score points, or if it's the final battle round, you score at the end if you've gone second, or you're going to prevent your opposition from scoring. So if you can prevent them taking that 5 points, That's going to be very good for you, especially if it's a score 1, score 2, score more. You're going to potentially stop them from scoring more as well. So it could be 10 points that you're taking away from your opponent. You got Assault Intercessors with jump packs. They've had a couple of points increases lately, so they're not quite as good. They do come with Deep Strike, so they can come from reserve anywhere on the battlefield. They've got a little bit of help with their Mortal Wound ability. So on the charge, you roll a d6 for each model in the unit, and on 4+, it is a mortal wound. So you've got a leader, they get to do it as well. And if you're taking a 10-man unit, that's quite a lot of d6s that you're rolling. They also come with 2 plasma pistols, which is nothing to turn your nose up. There's a decent amount of close combat fire. And you do have the Power Fist on the Sergeant as well, so they can do a bit more damage in melee than you expect, especially if you've got a leader with them. But they are really fast. They got the fly keyword, so they can pop around once they're on the battlefield and try and take objectives or just harry the backfield defense of your opponent just to whittle down some of their weaker units. Then we've got Scouts, who are probably on their 3rd point increase in a row. They're getting towards the point where they're not auto takes now, but 1 is quite useful. They do have the infiltrators, so they can set up early on the board before the first turn, so they can set up in no man's land as long as they're 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone or from an enemy unit as well. So the main use for these is to either move block early game to stop your opponent getting into the midfield, getting into your lines, or to take an early objective to force their hand. This is quite good against armies with big bases, such as Knights maybe, or if you're looking at Cult of Speed with the big bases on the buggies, you can really block them in quite early on, especially if you've gone first, to stop them getting where they want to be. And I'm putting their battle plans back a turn or 2 while you set up, which is quite nice. Then we've got Outriders, who have had a bit of a glow up. They've got large bases, so they can auto move block and occupy objectives, especially early game. They're fast, they've got movement 12, they're really durable with toughness 5 and 4 wounds. They're quite tough to take out, especially if you put Armor of Contempt on them as well, or you manage to get them the benefits of cover. The new ability grants them +1 strength and +1 damage on the charge, so they're strength 5 and damage 2. And if you're using them in the Assault Doctrine, they can advance and charge, and if you're using the right stratagem, they also get the Lance, which is +1 to wound, as well as an additional AP. So the strength 5, +1 to wound, 2 AP, 2 damage, which is quite a nice profile. Because they can advance and charge in the Assault Doctrine, you do have quite a large threat range. It's on average a 23-inch threat range to get a charge off. You can either use this early game to target a unit, straight off the bounce, charge out, maybe take out a guard unit, or Storm Guardian, something like that. A unit that the opponent's going to use to try and hold an objective out of line of sight. You can take this out to make sure they're having to put a more useful and expensive unit onto that objective. Looking at the strategy that you can employ, you're going to really focus on layering your attacks into waves, making efficient use out of the doctrines. You want to be targeting each turn how you're going to operate. The target priority is key, especially if you're using 2 alpha moment targets. You really do need to select one that you can wipe out quickly to activate the second one. You'll have a lot of deep striking units, so this will force a deep defensive position from your opponent because they will be worried about you deep striking in, especially with the likes of the Hellblasters that can have quite a high damage output. You want to really focus on removing point scoring units early in the game. This will help you force your opponent to use their more expensive units, maybe even the melee units, to have them deeper in the field, creating a stagnant line, which then you can exploit. Then you have the Lieutenant's ability to choose a priority objective. Now you can either choose this if there's one in the middle, which you're really going to fight over to get that rerolls of 1s to wound, or you can use it for one on the flank where your opponent then might shift their priorities elsewhere and leave that one alone, realizing that that flank's going to be quite weak for them. And you can use this to try and set up a flanking move, either go for a pincer attack or a hammer and anvil attack against them. And finally, Ultramarines are all about creating consistent scoring throughout the game. Each turn you want to be targeting a consistent amount of points across your primaries and your secondaries to stay quite level throughout the entire game and make your opponent bleed points where you can just overtake them. The tactics that you can employ is like turns 1 and 2 is about taking board control. It's about taking control of the objectives, the space, move blocking and forcing your opponent to operate in small areas of the field. The pre-game use of putting the Hellblasters into Deep Strike will really make them tighten up the back line, because these coming in turn 2 and 3 onwards, they can single-handedly, especially with the sustained hits or the lethal hits, do a substantial amount of damage to your enemy. I'll have a lot of other deep striking opportunities as well, because we've got a lot of units that can come in that manner, and it's all about dominating early board control, and then once you're racking up the points, it will force them to come forward, creating the space on the flanks and in the deployment zone for you to then deep strike into to take control. Early border control can really be utilised by using scouts to set up nomans and use them as move block or take early objectives. You've got a lot of pace coming in from the Outriders, where they can move in quite quickly using the big bases to move block, or if you're going for the Assault Doctrine, you've got that large threat range where they can come in with those high AP and high damage attacks. And you want to really be targeting your alpha moment onto 2 points scoring units, one that you've got a guarantee kill against, which is not going to take an awful lot of firepower, just so then you can have the secondary alpha moment come in. It's pointless choosing 2 quite heavy targets if you can't take out the first one, and then the units that you put in position to take out the second one, they're going to lose the rerolls and the +1 to wound. So you really want to guarantee your first one getting taken out quickly, so then you can focus fire on the second one. Having this ability will also force your opponent to try and hide the more expensive units, or the ones that they're going to really build their strategy around. And it's going to make them a little bit more tentative at using them, because you can really focus fire on them with this ability. The Intercessors with the new ability, I think the 4 shots are really good at thinning the ranks of your T3 and T4 bodies. Once you've sticking to your objectives, you can push forward. You do have that assault keyword, so you can advance and then get 4 shots away with each of them. It's going to really thin out the ranks of their units that they're going to use to score primary points by holding objectives. It's going to thin out the ranks and create opportunities for you to deep strike into. Turns 2 to 3, you want to look at bringing in the Hellblasters from Deep Strike, and you want to be targeting your high value targets. Again, this is the one that you're going to be using probably your second alpha moment target on, when they're going to come in, focus fire on that and take it out, and let the rest of your army focus on the primary target to take that out prior to this. You want to keep at least one of your Outriders back for a counter attack, because they've got that 23-inch charge range with those additional strength and damage on the charge. And if you're in the Assault Doctrine, you can advance and charge, and you can use this stratagem where you can get the lance, which is the +1 to wound, as well as the additional AP. They're going to hit very hard when you want to counter thrust against the enemy, when they're pushing into a position that you don't potentially want them to. This will also give them something to think about, where they're going to have to consider their movements, because you do have this strong counter-punching threat. The Reavers you want to save for turn 3 and onwards. They're mainly going to come down to try and take the secondaries by turning off objective control and forcing battle shock. They do have a decent amount of firepower now with the AP on the knives, and they do have precision, so they can target some of the characters in other armies, especially the ones that are T3 bodies, which they're quite easy to get into, but they're going to be mainly used for coming in and taking those objectives. You really do want to target on the support and point scoring units, the ones that are going to give buffs, the ones that they want to hold objectives to and not really do much, while they push the more expensive and damage dealing units further afield. You want to take these out first of all, which is going to force them to reevaluate their strategies and tactics, and maybe not be as efficient with these units, where they're going to have to hold them back more, because they will have to hold objectives. And if you can make one of their strong units, which they want to push forward and do damage, you can put them in a position where they're going to have not as much line of sight, so they're not going to have range firepower, or as a melee unit, where you can push it into their deployment zone onto an objective, and then just ignore it for the rest of the game. Not targeting these units is often more effective than trying to bring them down. Sometimes these units require a vast amount of firepower to bring them down, but if you can put them in a position where they're ineffective, this is often better than actually targeting them, because you're going to decrease their ability to do what they're being designed to do, and then they're going to have to take up a secondary or tertiary role, which is going to score fewer points than they expect. Once they do have to come out, when they are chasing the game, they will be out in the open, and this is where the Lancers and the Hellblasters can really start focus firing and bringing them down. When you get that reroll of your hit rolls with your alpha moment and your +1 to wound, they're going to be wounding, or the Lancers are going to be wounding everything in the game on 2s, and then your Hellblasters are going to be on 2s, 3s, and potentially 4 at worst. So these can really focus fire and bring down these tougher targets. Now, looking at your overall list, it all depends on the meta in your area. Different areas have different types of skill levels, different armies, different ways of leaning, different ways of skewing. So it all depends on what is in your area. But really, your HQ choices, you're going to be looking at Rebute, or if you're not going for the second officer moment, you're taking Marnie as Calgar, because he's a very good option. But you do want to take Ventress, Titus and the lieutenant with a combi weapon. You've also got the option of the lieutenant to get the lethal hits, maybe on the Hellblasters. Your infantry, you are going to be taking multiple intercessors, 2 to 3 squads probably. Possibly 1 jump pack intercessors, 1 incursors, and maybe a scouts unit. And then your elite units, you are going to be taking probably 2 reavers, 2 outriders, and then you're going to be looking at potentially your Stern Guard veterans if you want some anti-infantry firepower, or you could take eliminators and possibly even double up on those to have their essentially baby las cannons that they come with. Your vehicles, you are mostly focusing on the Gladiator Lancers with their consistent firepower to take out those very heavy targets. If you like the video, guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel to see all future content. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.